In 2014, psychologists at the University of Virginia ran an experiment. They put people in an empty room. No phone, no book, no window, nothing to look at, nothing to do. Just sit there with your own thoughts for 15 minutes. Before the experiment, each participant was given an electric shock, painful, but not dangerous, and asked if they'd pay money to avoid experiencing it again. Every single person said yes. Then they were left alone in the room, with one option, a button that would shock them. 15 minutes, no stimulation, just you and your mind. 2/3 of men shocked themselves rather than sit quietly. One man pressed the button 190 times. They chose pain over boredom. And if you think you'd be different, that you'd sit peacefully, meditate, enjoy the silence, the data suggests otherwise. Most of us can't tolerate our own minds for more than a few minutes before we start reaching for something, anything, to fill the void. But here's what's strange. Boredom feels like a design flaw, a glitch in human consciousness, an error that evolution should have weeded out. Except it didn't. Every human being on Earth gets bored. We've been getting bored for hundreds of thousands of years. Which means boredom isn't a bug. It's a feature. And it might be the reason you're alive. Let's define what we're talking about. Boredom isn't laziness. It isn't relaxation. It isn't apathy. Psychologist John Eastwood, who has spent years studying this emotion, defines it precisely. The aversive experience of wanting, but being unable to engage in satisfying activity. Read that again. Wanting to be engaged, unable to find it. That's the key. Boredom isn't the absence of desire, it's frustrated desire. It's energy with nowhere to go, arousal without a target. And it feels terrible. Brain imaging shows that boredom activates the amygdala, the same region that processes fear and threat. It activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that plans and problem solves. Your brain treats boredom like an emergency. Because for most of human history, it was. Imagine your ancestor, 50,000 years ago. He's survived the hunt. His belly is full. The predators are quiet. He's sitting by the fire, safe for the moment. And then it comes. That restless feeling, that nagging dissatisfaction, that itch with no name. He could ignore it, stay comfortable, stay put. But evolution didn't reward the comfortable. The ones who survived were the ones who couldn't sit still. The ones who felt that unbearable urge to move, to explore, to find something new even when everything seemed fine. Boredom was the alarm that said, "This is not enough. There is more out there. Go find it." Here's what psychologist Sandy Mann realized when she started studying boredom. Imagine a world where we didn't get bored. We'd be perpetually excited by everything, raindrops falling, the cornflakes at breakfast. We'd never differentiate between the meaningful and the meaningless. We'd be captivated by dust particles, while the tiger approached from behind. Boredom is the brain's filter. It says, "This is no longer interesting," which means this is no longer useful, which means you need to look somewhere else. Contentment is dangerous. Satisfaction is a trap. An animal that is perfectly happy where it is will stay where it is, even as the environment changes, the resources run out, the opportunities disappear. The species that survived were the restless ones, the ones who were always slightly dissatisfied, always looking for something more. Natural selection favored the bored. Think about what boredom drives you to do. It pushes you to explore new territories, new food sources, new social connections. It pushes you to take risks you wouldn't otherwise take, to cross the river, to try the strange fruit, to approach the other tribe. It pushes you to create, to tinker, to experiment, to build tools and tell stories and invent things that didn't exist before. Every human innovation, every discovery, every invention, every work of art began with someone who was bored enough to think, "What if?" Boredom is the engine of civilization. The itch that built the world. In 2014, researchers gave participants the most boring task imaginable: copying phone numbers from a phone book for 15 minutes. Then they gave them a creativity test. Come up with as many uses as you can for a pair of polystyrene cups. The people who had just endured the boring task outperformed the control group. They came up with more ideas, and stranger ones: earrings, musical instruments, Madonna-style bras. The boredom had unlocked something. Here's what's happening in your brain. When you're focused on a task, you're using your executive attention network, the parts of your brain that control and direct your attention. But when you're bored, when there's nothing to focus on, a different system takes over. It's called the default mode network, and it only activates when you're not doing anything. This is where your mind wanders, where you daydream, where you make connections between ideas that have nothing to do with each other. The default mode network is where creativity lives. But here's the problem. We've engineered boredom out of existence. Every moment of potential boredom, waiting in line, sitting on the bus, lying in bed, we fill with our phones, scrolling, swiping, consuming. We get the dopamine hit of novelty without the discomfort of the void. And we've lost something we didn't know we needed. We're trying to swipe and scroll the boredom away, says Sandy Man. But in doing that, we're making ourselves more prone to boredom. Every time we grab our phone, we're not allowing our mind to wander and solve its own problems. The more we avoid boredom, the more we need to avoid it. Our tolerance drops. We need more and more stimulation to feel satisfied, until nothing feels like enough. But boredom has a darker edge. Chronic boredom, the kind that doesn't lift, that becomes a permanent state, is one of the strongest predictors of depression, anxiety, and addiction. In a study of 156 recovering addicts, the single most reliable factor that predicted whether someone would relapse wasn't stress or trauma or access to substances. It was boredom. People who couldn't tolerate the empty spaces in recovery went back to filling them the only way they knew how. And it's not just addiction. Easily bored people are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, eating disorders, compulsive gambling, hostility, anger, poor academic performance, failed relationships, lower life satisfaction. The same restlessness that drove our ancestors to explore new continents now drives us to self-destruction. Because boredom doesn't care if the solution is healthy. It just wants stimulation. It just wants the void filled. And in a world designed to exploit that need, a world of infinite scroll and on-demand entertainment and substances engineered for maximum reward, boredom becomes a vulnerability. The same signal that once saved our species is now being weaponized against us. So what do we do with this ancient alarm system in a world that never stops ringing? First, recognize what boredom actually is. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's not a character flaw. It's not something to be cured. It's information. Boredom is your brain saying, "This isn't working. This doesn't matter to you. You need to find something that does." Wijnen van Tilburg, a researcher at the University of Southampton, puts it simply: boredom makes people keen to engage in activities that they find more meaningful. That's the key word: meaningful. Not just stimulating, not just novel, not just entertaining. Meaningful. Boredom is the gap between what you're doing and what matters to you. And every time you feel it, you have a choice. You can numb it, scroll through your phone, watch another video, find another distraction, push the button that shocks you just to feel something. Or you can listen. What is the boredom telling you? What is missing? What would actually satisfy this restless energy, not temporarily, but truly? The discomfort of boredom is the pressure that creates diamonds. It's the irritation that makes the pearl. It's the emptiness that demands to be filled with something real. 50,000 years ago, your ancestor sat by the fire, full, safe, surrounded by everything he needed. And he felt it, that itch, that unbearable restlessness, that voice saying, "This isn't enough." He could have ignored it, stayed comfortable, stayed still, but he didn't. He stood up. He walked into the dark. He crossed mountains and oceans and continents, driven by a feeling he couldn't name. That feeling is still in you. Every time you're bored, really bored, not just understimulated, something ancient is waking up. Something that has pushed humans to the edges of the world and the limits of imagination. It's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. Because comfort is a trap, and your boredom knows it. So the next time you feel it rising, that restless, nagging, unbearable itch, before you reach for your phone, before you shock yourself just to feel something different, stop. Listen. Your boredom is trying to tell you something, and it might just save your life.